The Incredible Hulk is one of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. He possesses seemingly limitless strength that is influenced by his anger. The madder he gets, the stronger he gets, so it's difficult for anything or anyone to really stand in his way for very long. But in this video, I'm going to count down the 10 greatest villains of the Hulk, the ones who do stand in his path, take on and defy his power, at least attempt to. Like all of my lists, these choices were based solely on my own personal opinions. These are my favorite villains of the Hulk, that I believe to be the best. We all have different preferences for characters, so our lists might not line up in every instance, but that's okay. Starting off the list at number 10 is Zzzax, the living dynamo, a being of pure electricity created from a nuclear power plant accident. It absorbs the electrical energy from human brains to survive, taking on their personality traits for a short while afterwards. It can also possess individuals completely if it wants to. The more energy Zzzax absorbs, the larger and stronger it becomes. Zzzax is an interesting villain for the Hulk because he can't simply punch his way out of battles involving it, as much as he would like to. At number 9 we have a team, the UFOs, a group of individuals that attempted to recreate the accident that created the Fantastic Four to give themselves superpowers. The members include Vector, who has the power of telepathy, Vapor, who can turn herself into any type of gas, usually a poisonous one, Ironclad, the muscle of the team that is made up of organic metal, and X-Ray, who is essentially living energy that can fly, turn invisible, and emit negative gamma rays that can turn the Hulk back into Bruce Banner. Combined, the UFOs are an extremely competent challenge for the Hulk, and have been a thorn in his big green ass on numerous occasions. Moving on to number 8 with the Juggernaut, typically a villain of the X-Men, but has had his fair share of hard-hitting battles with the Hulk as well. His real name is Cain Marko, who was empowered by a gem belonging to the deity Zzzax, turning him into a human juggernaut. This gem grants Marko invulnerability, as it covers him in a mystical force field, and when he builds up enough momentum, he is virtually unstoppable, which makes him a great opponent for the Hulk, someone who gets stronger and stronger the angrier he becomes. Next up at number 7 is the Wendigo, a large, nearly indestructible furry monster that feeds on human flesh. It is the result of a curse, one that affects anyone who resorts to cannibalism in the northern woods of Canada. There have been several Wendigos in the Marvel Universe, and they have battled the likes of the Hulk, Spider-Man, the X-Men, and Alpha Flight, among others. At one point, the Hulk had been bitten by a Wendigo, and was turned into a Wenda-Hulk, but thankfully was cured shortly afterwards. At number 6, Carl the Crusher Creel, aka the Absorbing Man, who gained the ability to absorb the properties of anything his body comes in contact with, thanks to a special potion given to him by Loki in a scheme to take out his brother Thor. The Absorbing Man's powers lead to a lot of interesting visuals in the stories he's featured in, with his body changing and adapting to whatever it touches. That said, depending on what he comes in contact with, can make or break his effectiveness in battle. At one point, he managed to drain the Hulk of gamma energy using his powers, but in another encounter with She-Hulk, he came in contact with water and dissolved into it, so it's not always the greatest of abilities. Moving on to number 5, with Bruce Banner's abusive and alcoholic father, Brian Banner. What's interesting about this character, this villain, is that he was retconned into the Hulk's origin decades after the Hulk had debuted in comics, which is kind of cool. Brian had abused Bruce as a child, calling him an accident, a mistake, a monster, refusing to acknowledge his intelligence, thinking it was some kind of trick. He believed Bruce had inherited something he called a monster gene from him, and knew that he had some sort of genetic defect due to Brian being exposed to gamma radiation, working as a physicist. Brian would grow mentally unstable and be incarcerated at an insane asylum after he killed his wife Rebecca in front of their son. Years later, when Brian was released, he would harass Bruce at the gravesite of his mother on the anniversary of her death no less, which resulted in Bruce pushing his father back with a swift kick, sending him hurtling into his wife's tombstone, which killed him from the blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Bruce would try to bury this dark memory deep down inside of him. After Bruce had become the Hulk, he would be frequently haunted by the ghost of his late father. Recent stories have even introduced concepts such as the Devil Hulk, which is an evil and demon-like version of the Hulk, Bruce's darker and evil side that manifests itself in his mind essentially. It exists, mostly in part, due to the abuse Bruce had suffered at the hands of his father growing up. Because Brian Banner had experimented with gamma radiation, trying to uncover the third form of it, the first two being particles and waves, that too introduced a lot of new concepts into the Hulk's mythology, like the below place, the bottom layer of reality, that also acts as the bedrock of hell. It's where gamma mutates like the Hulk and even Abomination go when they die, explored after the death of Bruce Banner during the events of Civil War II, which I have briefly mentioned before on the channel. Next up at number 4 is the Maestro, Bruce Banner from an alternate future, a dystopian future ravaged by nuclear war. Maestro would rise to power in this reality, becoming much stronger and smarter than the original Hulk, finding the perfect harmonization between Hulk's strength and malicious nature and Bruce Banner's gifted scientific mind. Rebels led by Rick Jones would use a time machine, created by Doctor Doom, to bring the Bruce Banner of the past into the future, in the hopes of stopping Maestro once and for all. Maestro would end up getting sent back in time to the blast site of the gamma bomb that created the Hulk, and would die in the explosion. Moving on to number 3, I'm going with Red Hulk, the monstrous form General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross can transform into, thanks to the efforts of Advanced Idea Mechanics, AIM. Red Hulk has the ability to absorb radiation, which increases his strength, and the angrier he becomes, the hotter his temperature becomes, because he can also emit radiation. Unlike Bruce Banner, who has little to no control over himself when he transforms into the Hulk, depending on the story of course, General Ross does, and has full control over his Hulk form. He can speak fluently while he is the Red Hulk, and can also access his vast knowledge of military strategies, making him more than formidable as a villain for the Green Giant. I've done a supervillain breakdown on this character before if you want to check it out and learn a bit more of his backstory and motivations. At number 2, we have Emil Blonsky, the Abomination. Man, what an awesome name. Blonsky was a spy for the KGB who infiltrated a U.S. Air Force base Bruce Banner had been stationed at to take photos of gamma radiation equipment. He would be bombarded by gamma rays himself and transform into a similar Hulk-like monster. The Abomination is smarter than the Hulk, as Blonsky managed to retain his intelligence post-transformation. He is also twice as powerful, though the Hulk can surpass his strength if he is angered enough in battle. The Abomination works so well as a villain of the Hulk because he is basically an evil version of the Hulk. Seeing these two powerhouses knock heads together never gets old. The Abomination-Hulk rivalry is bitter and personal, going to very dark places in some instances, like when he killed Banner's love interest, Betty Ross, by poisoning her, injecting her with some of his own gamma-irradiated blood. And finally, at number 1, we have the Leader, the greatest villain of the Incredible Hulk, in my opinion. Much like Bruce Banner, a man by the name of Samuel Stearns had also been affected by gamma radiation, but instead of it increasing his physical size and strength, it increased his intelligence, enlarging his head to contain the limitless knowledge that is now housed inside. A lot of villain lists I see online regarding Hulk villains, at least on YouTube, usually place one of his more physically focused adversaries in their top spots, but what makes the leader so interesting to me is that he is the opposite of the Hulk. He is a great foil to that character, because he counters his brawn with brains. I like that. He might look feeble in appearance when placed next to the Hulk, but he is one of the most cunning adversaries Bruce Banner has ever faced. The leader is another villain I have looked at before in my supervillain breakdown series, so if you haven't checked that video out before and want some more information on this character, make sure to give it a watch sometime. And that concludes my look at the 10 greatest villains of the Incredible Hulk. There were a few other characters I could have mentioned, like Bybeast, the Ringmaster, Modok, Tyrannus, even Wolverine, but they simply didn't make the cut, at least with my list that is. If you would like to share your favorite Hulk villains, feel free in the comment section down below. I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you would like to see more like it, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of all future content I release on here. You can also support me and my channel over on patreon.com and gain access to exclusive episodes of my podcast, and take part in monthly polls that help determine topics for some of my videos. I will see you all in the next one. Take care and stay nerdy.